And welcome, one and all, to a new episode of Night Shift Live, where we are coming to you live from FBC Mortgage Stadium after UCF dismantled Sam Houston State 45-14. I am Bryson Turner, currently in one of the booths in Roth Tower, and Kyle Nash is joining us from the concourse level at the bottom there. Kyle, just what are your thoughts after tonight's game?
Hey, well, listen, we all know that the main question was going to be KJ Jefferson. I think we answered that question pretty nicely at the end of the day, right? Listen, I know that people may be like, but he didn't throw for 200 yards. Actually, he did, but more than one questionable call on the night. One of them certainly affected KJ's pass total. Listen, aside from officiating in what Eric Lopez would probably call a preseason game, listen, KJ Jefferson's confidence and his form and delivery came in a way that was way different from week one. Certainly, I don't think anybody's going to be befuddled believing that. It was exactly what people were hoping to find here in the bounce house, hosting Sam Houston, which basically.
Oh, and it looks like Kyle might have Oh, here we go. It looks like Kyle experienced a little bit of technical issues. Here we go. Got you back, Kyle.
Oh, okay. So, but yeah, still thoroughly dominant in its own way. And Bryson, listen, I think the other thing, too, that's worth mentioning, I know you're going to want to stat up talking about RJ Harvey and the big night he had. We'll get to that a little later. But I think hyping up special teams a little bit, this could be the most confident people have been, coaches, players, otherwise, that they've been in UCF special teams for some time. Xavier Townsend returned the ball like the beast. Colton Boomer hitting a 50-yarder. Mitch McCarthy doing his job punting. And how about Evan Morris booting a ball out of the back of the end zone, practically into the concourse there late in the game? Certainly special teams has showed up in a way that they hadn't much during the year last year, and you got to enjoy that.
Oh, absolutely. I still remember the comments in the post game where I believe it was Gus that mentioned how Evan Morris is the biggest kicker in college football. After that, I'm sure you could appreciate that, Kyle. Kyle, a person with beef that can also kick.
Oh, hey, listen, that won't be the last versatility in beef we talk about for the night. I mean, I did mention KJ Jefferson is a bit of a teaser on that, but hey, wait. Evan Morris coming in from Michigan State, a transfer from that particular school. Obviously, he was in there as a kicker, ended up changing to be tight end for a while. Now here at UCF, meeting the biggest kicker role, as Gus put it. And hey, listen, I think the biggest thing for me, going back to KJ here real quick, the offense came out a little slow, had back-to-back penalties on the offensive line. You're never really hoping to see that. But then here comes KJ Jefferson facing a 3rd and 9, completing the pass. And really, you asked him in postgame, Bryson Turner, what the difference between KJ Jefferson week 1 and week 2 were. And he said he let the game come to him. We kind of explored that on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast last week. Bing! There on Night Shift, where we talked about how when KJ was feeling confident, hit the big ball last week to Kobe Hudson, he was talking about the play call rather than about how he felt. And it was more of the same when I asked about his approach to 3rd down and how important his role is in completing thirds and long like that. He said, listen, 3rd down is an important down in college football. Really, pretty much arguably any football, let's be real. But in college football.
Oh, and it looks like Kyle had a little bit of a technical issue again. Here he is. He's back. All right, Kyle, we lost you for just a second.
Don't typically have experienced passers. This case, UCF doesn't appear to have that problem, at least tonight.
All right. Well, that is certainly always great to hear. I do agree as well. KJ looked like I would say a much improved over his performance over last time. But look, let's go ahead and I know you talked about wanting to stat it up. So let's go ahead and stat it up, shall we? So KJ Jefferson ended up completing 12 of his 15 passes on the night. It would have been 14 for 17 had there not been a couple of penalties for 169 yards, including a beauty of a pass to Kobe Hudson that went for 53 yards. It helped him get over the hump for 100.
By the way, Bryson, he'd have been closer to 150 if it wasn't for that phantom face mask called. I still don't understand that. I didn't see a close-up view from it in the press box. I don't know how good or bad a call it was, but it was certainly odd. I think even Coach called it bizarre after the game.
Oh, absolutely. I think absolutely. I mean, there was a couple of calls in this one where you were just absolutely befuddled at their
I would have
execution.
preferred the word dumbfounded, but we'll go with befuddled. Sure.
But that being said, despite the improved passing game, the big story is once again the rushing attack, where it was once again a touchdown party in that group, with RJ Harvey turning in the 7th ever 4 rushing touchdown performance in program history, alongside 126 yards. I mean, we are 2 games into this season already, Kyle Nash, and he has 6 touchdowns. He had 16 touchdowns all of last season. So
Right.
already this is turning into a major start to this season for a running back that is really looking to establish himself in UCF's legacy, where he's now tied with Alex Haynes for the 5th most rushing touchdowns in program history.
Yeah, you mentioned the tie with Alex Haynes, and you and I were talking about it in the booth about where he could end up in history. I'll tell you this: Greg McCrae is already in trouble for dropping a spot. He holds the next spot above him with only 2 touchdowns away at 29. I think it's only a matter of time. Heck, he may even pass it himself next week against TCU. We'll be there, of course, to tell you about it after that game here on the Night Shift Live. Bing! But Bryson, I have to tell you, Miles Montgomery was fun to watch. We got a little bit of Penny Boone later in the game again. Listen, Oprah couldn't give away this many touchdowns during her show, man. There was touchdowns to be had everywhere. And, who couldn't like that any more than the UCF fan base for all the questions they had. And granted, listen, I would have liked to see KJ throw for a touchdown. And listen, Kobe was almost standing on that 53-yarder that you talk about. Maybe if he had like one more pinky to put on the ground to keep himself up, that would have been a huge ball for Kobe Hudson to take to the house, and a big catch that would give certainly the longest touchdown of the year to KJ Jefferson over the 62-yarder that RJ had last week, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That may not even been a touchdown that long run now that I'm thinking about it. But anyways.
Yeah. Well, don't forget on the rushing attack side, by the way, let's not forget Xavier Townsend as well, who ended up rushing 4 times for 51 yards and also caught 3 passes for 17 yards. You and I were talking about this in the booth, and I thought I might have heard someone in the press comparison, but it gave me Otis Anderson vibes in the sense that he's a Swiss Army knife type of player, and he once again really showed that again tonight. I think the difference is between Xavier and Otis is that Otis is a running back with wide receiving qualities, while Xavier Townsend is a wide receiver with running back qualities.
Listen, the late Otis Anderson did have plenty of receiving talent, just like Xavier has plenty of running talent, but Xavier's obviously a taller target. I think he has that working for him in the wide receiver space. And like you said, this is a trickeration guy. But we talk about trickeration, Bryson Turner. There was one particular reverse where another player showed the mass, multifaceted approach to the game. And that's when KJ Jefferson delivering a hell of a blow for a block to get a further run down the field there too. I think it was on a play that Xavier ran. What Gus Malzahn did some Gus Malzahn things and had some creative play calls for sure that we've come to know and love, or in the case of some fans, ask why, depending on the situation. But listen, I watching what we saw tonight, Bryson, listen, I'd hate to ring my own bell, bing, but in this particular instance, I think we've seen exactly what was prescribed from Night Shift, the Night Shift podcast on Monday, is that it was just a matter of him not straight arming the football. And, you asked him about it, letting the game come to him. And that was clearly what he did this evening.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we actually have have an apology coming to KJ through in the comments. Matt J saying, "I apologize to KJ. Duke can indeed hit the side of the barn." What did we say after the last week's live, Kyle? Because that the sky is not falling after the performance. KJ just had one just little bit rough start, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh no, what did we spend our NIL money on?" Well, this right here is the type of thing that you spend your NIL money on for a guy that like KJ Jefferson. Like you said, he ran 9 times for 50 yards, and then of course much improved in the passing game. He would have had much more had there not been penalties. This is the type of game that we honestly should kind of expect from a guy like KJ Jefferson that would come in and do. Let's also not forget Jeff Sharon commenting that O-line was folding people in that first half. You're the O-line expert, Kyle. RJ credited the O-line as well for him having the performance that he did. Break down that O-line for us tonight.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few mental errors. I think there was something about which, I mean, me personally, listen, I always loved when the defense came out in a 3-man front. That meant an easy run blocking day for me. And I had a running back about as good as RJ Harvey in the days when I was playing semi-pro ball. But the whole thing with some of the looks that they threw with that 3-man front, there were clearly some places where the O-lineman did get confused and had what I would call imperfect moments. We mentioned the opening drive with back-to-back O-line penalties, and they had no more for the evening. You don't want them at all, but to overcome it the way that they did throughout the rest of the game was obviously fantastic. And listen, I know that what's the platitude to drive a truck through holes? Listen, you could have done that certainly tonight. I might go get my SUV and fit it through some of those things. Hey, listen, absolutely that there was O-line prowess, but hey, let me give credit to my defensive brethren. Big presence in the game, holding again another school to a pedestrian run attack. To be honest, it was mostly gadget stuff and big swings that even got them on the board. But honestly, it's good for UCF's defense to see trickeration now, so that DBs know to be more disciplined and it could come at any time. I mean, for my money, it was the kind of the play action double pass thing where you expected kind of reverse and then he flings it instead. The corner or the DB, whoever was responsible for that receiver, should have seen him blazing down the field and known what was happening. Instead, he kept his eyes on what appeared to be the runner, and then the game was over. But it's funny, there's some alleged piece out there that the coach of Sam Houston State referred to Gus as a gadget guy, and yet the way they scored was with themselves using gadgets, So we'll leave it at that. You got any other comments there after Jeff Bryson, or we need to do more analysis here? What are we doing?
So I do want to actually bring up the trickeration really quickly, because I feel like if we do want to make some, because I think any type of criticism we would give with this game is mostly nitpicks, I would say, right? Like, because I would argue that this is probably as good of a game that you could probably ask for this team with an opponent like this. So if there was any one nitpick, it is on that trickeration play where the defense was clearly exposed and they paid for it with that one, with Sam Houston getting their first touchdown of the evening. So I think you basically hit the nail on the head. I think if anything, it's really good that this program was faced with this type of play now, so that way they're not caught off with that and be more prepared in a more high leverage situation down the road for that type of thing. The other aspect is that second touchdown that Sam Houston was able to get as well, where they were able to get that 22-yard pass late in the game. It may be a garbage time touchdown, but I think it's one of those types of things where you want to make sure you have your players on top of things late in the game to avoid something like that going forward. So I think this is going to be a very good learning experience for the entire defensive back room. But at the same time, they also came away with 2 interceptions, which is the next thing I think we definitely should talk about, because Jeff Sharon's talked about it on the Night Shift podcast, the importance
I assume that's why he's watching the Night Shift live here. He wants us to talk about turnovers. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Mac McDonald with his first turnover, as a Knight getting the interception, and then Sheldon with the second one on the evening. Again, transfers making the difference on the defense. We hype that up, but really, are we surprised with the way that Gus Malzahn revamped this defense the way that he did, the way you could argue he attempted to last year, except this group's making plays. And then the mainstays of the line there in the middle. I know allegedly that Ricky Barber and Lee Hunter were supposed to just evaporate into thin air with Johnny Walker being injured. Clearly not the case. And by the way, Matt Alexander doing some of his own work handling business to keep the rotation alive and keep things moving so the big guys don't get tired. Clearly a dominant performance overall. I don't know what production work Bryson is doing, but I'm not sure I'm supposed to see that. And with all that in mind, listen, the only limitation, what's his word? I don't even call it criticism. The only way you can bring down defense in this game is the caliber of the opponent, right? Surely if Eric Lopez were here, he'd be pounding the table, but it's practically an FCS school. Yeah, great. But again, in a world where we're dealing with, having upwards of 40 transfers on a squad and guys are getting used to things, you got a transfer quarterback who's in a new scheme, who now you all understand what Gus meant when they said it's his first rodeo. They didn't mean throwing the ball. They meant in this scheme, not to throw any shade at anybody in particular. Certainly not trying to keep anybody from being under the sun and talk about that. No, get it right. But yeah, you can clearly see the difference as everybody seems to be getting used to things here in this scheme. And the first road game is really the only part that we don't know the answer to. I know there's a lot of bad juju associated with Gus and road games, but also I think this could be the first time in a while his starting quarterback is, well, let's call it fully healthy, though he did have some ice on his hand after the game that was on his non-throwing hand. I think the big guy will be fine, and it could be the healthiest the starter has been in some time in a Big 12 game on the road for UCF.
Indeed, Mac McWilliams talked about this defense as being kind of feisty type of defense, and getting those turnovers being important. Jeff Shannon, give me some apples and dough so we can make some turnovers right there. We'll talk some.
Jeff no longer allowed to criticize my dad humor.
Well, get ready for some more humor, Kyle, because you talked about FCS. Well, Matt J is tisking at you because apparently Sam Houston dropped state from their name when they transitioned to FBS, which
said what I said, Matt J. That's the joke.
Well, Jordan Perez is defending you a little bit, saying tisk Sam Houston. Their own official website is confused. So I think Jordan Perez is defending you on this one.
Well, hey, that's fair too. But again, me purely doing comedy and Eric Lopez style of questioning and acknowledging that this is not a power conference chain.
Matt J responding, lol dudes, I'm trying to ensure the funds are limited. That's great. One other comment from Matt J that I didn't get a chance to get to yet that I do think we need to talk about when we Xavier Townsend. Matt J said Xavier is so happy we got him. Just hope he doesn't get overly exposed doing returns. Receiver number 2 needs to stay healthy. We haven't really talked about Xavier doing returns tonight. And I think the reason why we didn't is because I think he basically did pretty much the same thing he did last time, where I think he was very impressive in the return game. But Matt J does provide a valid point, with receiver number 2, putting himself in harm's way in the return game as much as he is. It's a bit of a thing to wonder, is there somebody else that might be able to kind of help him and take the load off of his shoulders, kind of like how Evan Morris is taking some load off of Colton Boomer as far as kicking goes.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, we talked about that Monday on the Night Shift podcast. Bing! And listen, Matt's good to be concerned. I can remember back to 2017, 2018, similar concerns made of the late Otis Anderson at the time. And listen, frankly, this is what happens when you have a Swiss Army knife. They get exposed in many ways. But I think X is kind of a situational player in the way Gus is running it. He doesn't have him out there necessarily every down, though it does kind of shape up that it looks like he's going to be, the number 2 receiver so far. We haven't seen Trent Whitmore, for example, in a bit, although I would also give credit to Randy Pittman and his presence as a tight end. Certainly big shoes to fill behind Alec Holler from, his time here, of course, but he's coming into his own as a freshman. He's doing that whole thing, or he's not a freshman anymore, I should say. He's not a first-year player anymore, and it's starting to show a lot of quality blocks. I know he doesn't have receiving numbers off the charts, but, in this offense, I think getting KJ out of...
Oh, and it looks like we kind of lost Kyle for a second there. Here we go. All right, Kyle, we have you back.
That's really the key to his role, is to kind of help KJ get out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And great of you to mention Randy Pittman on that one, getting 2 catches for 32 yards. I think because of how the passing attack has kind of been not in the spotlight that much over these first 2 games, it's Randy Pittman, I feel like might actually go into conference play a little bit underestimated potentially. But from what we've seen in these 2 games, he has really showcased the type of receiving threat that he can be. Because I would argue that after Kobe Hudson, and he's right with Xavier Townsend as kind of maybe the number 2 receiving option for KJ Jefferson. Jefferson, at least from that's what it's looked like to me.
Yeah, no, well, KJ's acknowledged as much. He certainly did after the game tonight, talking about, in passing, Randy's role in the offense, and that's what we saw.
So, and let's also bring up here. Funny thing. I remember in the press conference, because I want to make sure that the viewing public gets a chance to hear this as well, because it was a joy to hear this, and we were in the press conference. So KJ was asked about the in-helmet communications and how that's been going on in now in this first 2 games, and he apparently told us that Gus can actually get pretty loud when he's in his mic there.
Yeah, no, KJ was asked what the adjustment was like with the in-game communication between game 1 and game 2, and he said there wasn't a whole lot of difference, but coach needs to get the mic further from his mouth. He get pretty loud, pretty excited on some plays. Certainly one of the more funny moments. And hey, further proof that KJ had more confidence about him going into this game. He had mentioned he had even taken a little dig about Kobe maybe having more yards if he didn't get that face mask and passing. And, he mentioned part of his journey and having what coach said was his best week of practice yet as a Knight. He had mentioned during the week that the key was finding his focus and getting his confidence back, letting the game come to him. He even mentioned, he had talked to us about it in the offseason in an interview I had with him that you can find on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Mentioned how big his mom is in his life and how much they communicate. And throughout this week, his mother he had mentioned some undisclosed gifts that his mother had sent him to help him raise his confidence and, help remind KJ of the player he could be.
Oh yeah, KJ, this is probably the most relaxed KJ I've ever seen him be.
Yeah.
I think the difference between, I think even RJ mentioned it, is that KJ was a lot more of a confident guy this time around, and it really translated into his play. For anybody that had, I know we kind of mentioned it earlier with the comment, but anyone that was having doubts about KJ after last week's game needs to apologize to him in writing right now. Like this, college football fans, look, it's not, college football fans are notoriously fickle. This much we know. But I mean, that was one game. And so now to have this game that KJ's had just now, I think really proves to everybody, don't worry, nothing to see here. Don't worry. Everything's fine. And I think that this is the type of game you really want to have as you go into now a road matchup into open conference play against TCU. And this is where now you kind of start to think about, okay, this is where maybe the possibility of losing could come into play. Because, of course, the UCF had some issues on the road last year, but there's a lot of transfers this year. So there's a lot of new voices, a lot of new maybe road trip routines that potentially this team could learn from. We talked about it with the players in the press conference. KJ talked about it as well. What was the biggest thing that stuck out to you, Kyle, when everyone was kind of talking about, going on the road for the first time?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we kind of talked in regard to going on the road and dealing with that. I suppose, listen, first of all, let's get the obvious out of the way. Coach said it, going into last week, any team is vulnerable. I'd be crazy to not bring up some of the stuff that happened throughout college football that could have been large emergencies, everywhere. I'll put it this way. I don't want to get in any fights from anybody who's Irish here, but that was obviously a surprise result on the day. And that sort of thing was certainly avoided here emphatically. But listen, we're talking about testing now, and we've seen KJ come out right, which granted, I don't think we see a world where we would want KJ Jefferson to throw the ball that much, because that means they're stopping the run and the offense is already one-dimensional. I doubt we would want to see that anyway. We wouldn't want to see that from any Gus Malzahn offense, even if there's a quarterback like alleged Heisman candidate Dylan Gabriel, right? But what I think now is where I'm going to start looking for improvement is with some of the mental stuff with the offensive line, right? There's 2 weeks of film where you could see instances where O-linemen were confused and either jumped off sides. We had a delay of game somewhere in there. And, of course, then a hold on the center just means he got beat in the middle. That's something you would imagine that Kittler's going to get challenged early by a Big 12 front. You know, I granted I haven't done my scouting yet on TCU. I don't know what they have at the defensive tackle spot, but
Oh, and I do believe we lost Kyle there for a second. Technical difficulties being what they were. I went ahead and brought up the penalties that Kyle was kind of talking about there to kind of show you guys what we kind of were seeing. And most of these were in the early game, by the way. They had that hold, and most of these were on that first drive. You had that holding. Kyle talks about the false start, delay of game. We have Kyle back now. Kyle, I went ahead and brought up the list of penalties for you so you can kind of explain to the people what you were talking about there.
It's just a matter of trying to make sure the offensive line reduces mental errors. It comes out stronger, frankly. Obviously, setting the tone in a football game early, you have a better chance to compete. Obviously, coming out and having early mental errors. Obviously, KJ had it in week 1. The O-line did it this time in week 2 with a back-to-back penalty situation. And
Kyle and technical difficulties what they were. Here we go. Got Kyle back. There you go, Kyle.
Officials at time will certainly make up phantom calls. Welcome to college football. You got to be able to play through that. You can't do more by shooting yourself in the foot with mental errors.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And credit to UCF, most of these penalties came on that very first drive. They seem to kind of buckle down on that and fix that issue mid-game. That being said, you obviously want to make sure that doesn't happen at all going forward, or at least minimize it enough. But credit to KJ Jefferson for getting them out of that situation. I mean, it was considering they were like first and 20 something at that point. So the fact that KJ was still able to lead them to the promised land with RJ Harvey carrying it into the end zone, I think I would actually argue that might have been like the biggest drive of the season up to this point. As young as it is, I think because obviously obviously one can surpass it later, but I think from 2 games, I think that first drive might actually have been the biggest drive of the season, because this team was faced with a form of adversity of its own making because of the penalties. And KJ was able to confidently get the ball forward and get them and manage to get them out of that situation and manage to get points out of it.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, the ability for KJ to land the plane on the 3rd and 9. Obviously, some of the yards were gotten back by other plays, but the stops were made. Still facing a 3rd and long. KJ delivering, and that was everything. And I could see the argument where the defense was forced on its heels. That created the opportunity for RJ Harvey to do RJ Harvey things and cap the drive.
I love that we're now using RJ Harvey doing RJ Harvey things now. I mean,
how do you not at this point, though, Bryson? Like, at this point, he's a senior. He's on his way to breaking history, has broken history already in the form of tying the A train, Alex Haynes, with the.
And technical difficulties there, losing Kyle, and he's popped back up again. There you go. Oh, no. And here we are again. We have Jeff Sharon chiming in. UCF had 105 yards of offense on that first drive there. There we go. We got Kyle back.
Yeah, adding that with all the lost yardage and getting all that back. So there's statistician Jeff in the building again.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, RJ really showcased what he's capable of. And honestly, and we talked about this, and I think you're going to talk about this in your night class that's going to come out about this game, which you can find on the blackandgoldbanneret.com.
I was about to say, you can't ask for a bang before dropping the website. Links or it didn't happen, Bryson. Come on.
Very true. Very true. But we were talking about this in the booth, and now that RJ is already at 6 touchdowns on the season going into 2 games, he was already in the top 10 in program history coming into this one. And so now we're looking into a situation of, hey, where could he eventually get to? And if he ends up matching his season total from last year, which is 16, he's going to be up in the neighborhood with the likes of Willie English and Latavius Murray in the top 3 in program history in rushing touchdowns, with a majority of them coming in first 2 seasons. So considering what we've seen out of RJ Harvey now at this point, like how like I think someone was talking about like Heisman, but like you said, it would be good that he got votes.
Yeah, listen, this Heisman, RJ for Heisman thing's adorable. It really is, but they don't give them to people who aren't quarterbacks. This isn't the episode for me to bring up Ndamukong Suh being the biggest rip for Heisman in my entire life. The punchline's this, Bryson Turner. I think the element of the starting quarterback staying healthier will get RJ Harvey more touchdowns. What do I mean? I mean, if you can't stuff the box because you're worried about Kobe beating you over the top, suddenly an unfull box is going to have a better chance to stop RJ Harvey? Methinks not. So with KJ Jefferson in there being more sturdy and even able to throw blocks on his own, as we saw tonight, I mean, this is an opportunity for a truly balanced offense to keep RJ Harvey the touchdown machine that he's become. Again, not here to say he's going to beat Kevin Smith. He can't. There's always been a committee system. There's been too many mouths to feed in here. You know, sharing the ball with the likes of Isaiah Bowser from the past and Johnny Richardson. And, of course, this year, Miles Montgomery, Penny Boone. There's no way he's going to get enough touchdowns to be first, but he's going to make a heck of a campaign for possibly being second. And I'll talk more about that in the night class on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Lest we forget that Willie English, who's second place in program history, shared a backfield for the first half of his career with Mark Giacone, who is also up in the top 10 in rushing touchdowns in program history. Kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here. Matt J is chiming in. TCU, Colorado, UF, all looking very beatable, feeling better after this weekend. Kyle, you talked about the balanced offense like this. I don't know if maybe we should be getting too ahead of ourselves right now, but what are you thinking now as we kind of go forward now into Big 12 play?
I mean, how can I disagree with him? I thought all 3 of those teams looked beatable going into the season, and actually keeping my calm as somebody who's not a fanatic, just an analyst. Why would I be surprised by this take? We appreciate your public apology, Matt J, and I agree with you, man. Listen, I know that Eric Lopez has gone on record on this show last week saying he expects this to be an 8-win team. I will talk more about that on Monday on the Night Shift podcast. Bing! Well, when we record Monday, it'll probably drop Tuesday, obviously.
No, yes, absolutely, of course. So I think honestly, it's kind of funny because we're thinking about things to talk about, but I think looking at this, I mean, if anything, I feel like this game was almost like if a therapy session was a football game, I feel like this would be it from a fan standpoint, because we were coming out of that New Hampshire game just all in knots in our heads about, oh no, what happened to the offense, even though literally everything else was going completely okay. It's like UCF was triggered into having an anxiety attack in the fan.
Oh,
as far as
and it was everywhere, Bryson. No matter where you looked, people are nitpicking Coach Malzahn's comments, talking about first rodeo. People are going around everywhere and panicking on this and other shows out there. Yes, I'm firing shots at Eric Lopez, but that's okay. I love him. You know, it was so nutty. Now, I make jokes, but to Eric's credit, he also acknowledged that the opportunity to improve was there, and we did see that. Obviously, when I say balanced offense, I don't mean in 70 snaps, it's 35 and 35. I mean KJ hitting that big home run ball every now and again, like he did twice. Again, not accounting for the phantom face mask. That was bizarre, according to experts smarter than me, namely Coach Malzahn, right? I think there's enough there to let people think about it. And who knows? Listen, I think the part that we need to be most wary of might be for example, in Colorado, looking a couple games ahead to the 28th, the next UCF home game, we'll be doing the Night Shift Live podcast from the Bounce House. Don't worry, we'll have something next week for you after TCU. Don't get it twisted. But it would be interesting to see Coach Pran come out with Travis Hunter battling with Kobe Hudson all game and then letting somebody else shine like a Xavier Townsend or Randy Pittman to make a difference there and truly show what a balanced offense could look like, Bryson Turner.
Absolutely. Jordan Perez says, I thought the face mask penalty looked legitimate on TV. Did I imagine that?
Maybe you did. Like I said earlier, I didn't have the best angle in the press box, but again, it was certainly a bizarre occurrence to have a receiver called for a face mask. It's just such an odd thing. That's more what I comment on rather than the lack of prowess and the official. Though trying to convince me that KJ's arm wasn't moving forward on that alleged fumble would be a harder pill.
Yeah, the refereeing was actually quite interesting today. That was quite funny. We literally heard the false start, everyone but the snapper, twice. Which
that's not officiating. That's mistakes.
Well, yes, but I'm saying that the referee still had to the penalty, Kyle, and as far as the face mask goes, from my view, I was sitting right next to you. I honestly thought that Kobe Hudson was going to get called for a pass interference and not a face mask, and so that's kind of where the question marks kind of were coming out of my head. For
there was the DPI that was called on the defense right before the Sheldon interception, where the Sam Houston receiver had both his hands buried in the defender's chest, and UCF got called for the penalty. I, again, didn't see all that. Granted, the advantage that some of you out there might have on TV is you might get some better angles that I don't from the press box. So if I am mistaken, feel free to point it out in the comments. I am but a mere student of the game.
Oh, absolutely. And so I think this is a great way, because I know we talk about, Kyle, in post game how we kind of provide a therapy session for UCF fans in these post game kind of live streams, but I almost kind of feel like UCF did that, but the UCF football team almost did it for us tonight with their performance on the field.
Well, that's why you hear elements of management expectations sprinkled into my reaction here, Bryson Turner, right? The whole, hey, a balanced offense means this. Listen, KJ Jefferson may not make 10,000 for his career. Yes, I get it that there was 8,000 before, but I hope that UCF isn't behind in games constantly like Arkansas was, to where they have to throw it that desperately, to where he breaks 10,000 yards here as a night. In a perfect world, I would love to see RJ Harvey get enough touchdowns to pass Willie English, let's say before the space game battling Arizona that soon, and put up a situation where KJ Jefferson didn't have to throw the ball a lot. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's the wishful thinking we're looking for here, Bryson Turner.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's like it's interesting how we kind of match things up with expectations, but then we kind of realize to kind of flip them on its head. It's more like we brought KJ in because he can do this, but it doesn't mean he has to do it.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to be asked to do it is the point, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. Matt J also saying that was talking about that was clearly supposed. This is about the backwards pass called a fumble. That was clearly supposed to be a forward pass. His arm was moving forward, and it got deflected when his arm got hit. Maybe some weird rule I'm not aware of that made that a lateral. I thought that it was maybe this is the NFL I'm thinking about here, but like when I saw his arm moving forward, and so I thought when that happens, that's an incomplete pass.
What he's describing in the play is what happened, but he's not acknowledging for the forward movement of the arm for it to actually be a pass. Now, again, maybe there was a better angle that showed a lack of forward movement. From what I saw in the booth, that's what I saw.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. It was a very weird day from an official standpoint. But I would say, other than that, this UCF team was able to, in particular, KJ Jefferson was able to answer or at least address fan doubts, as unfounded as that may have been after the New Hampshire game, and has now, I think, shown itself a team that is capable of winning the potentially beatable games that they are going to have in their upcoming slate as they go up against TCU on the road for the first road match, and that's going to be their next task that they're going to have to do on the road with Colorado coming to town, which, make no mistake, you look at them and they're losing to Nebraska, sure, but don't underestimate a team that has an athlete like Travis Hunter or Shadur Sanders on their team. And then, of course,
listen, but Bryson Turner, I'm going to underestimate them because they play right into UCF's strength, playing hard-nosed football. When those guys are on the field, they can hurt you. When they're not on the field, they can't. And this UCF run game will certainly keep Shedeur Sanders off the field and keep Travis Hunter only on defense.
Exactly. And oh no, we're getting the expectations again. Undefeated. No, just kidding. Lonely Bumblebee going national champs. Yeah, no, like let's not swing the pendulum the other way again, where we're going. The sky is falling, and then we're going to win the national champion. Not like that's what college football fans do all the time anyway. So we've gone on for about 40 minutes. Kyle, anything that we haven't mentioned yet that you want to address, or what's your bottom line that you get from tonight's game? I talked about how UCF football kind of gave us the fans a therapy session, whether they needed it or not. Kyle, what were your?
Obviously needed it, Bryson Turner. Fans, media, and everybody alike. That wasn't the calm and cool and collected response that you got from certain students of the game, said he so very modestly. No, listen, obviously the outlook you were hoping for from KJ Jefferson, maybe you weren't necessarily happy with the performance of the team as a whole coming out flat, but certainly in even a rainy game, seeing the ball delivered on time and on target, minimal drops overall by the receivers. You got to like all of that. The ball not left on the ground by any running backs, you certainly have to love that. And listen, let's call all the above what it is. This was what you hope to see in what is essentially a college preseason game. And the real test comes on the road next week. And you'll read about all of that in night class on blackandgoldbanneret.com, which will be up very shortly here as I finish it shortly after this. But looking forward to all of it and to give it to you next week on the Night Shift Live.
So the Knights will be back in action next week on the road for the first time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday on Fox. So we're going to be on national TV for this.
Oh my goodness.
Kyle, that's what I'm seeing on the UCF schedule at the moment. 7:30 p.m. on Fox against TCU on the road for the first time this season. So here we go. The preparations for the preseason leads you to this moment right here. And it feels weird to start conference play this early in the season. I feel like UCF hasn't had their third game of the season be a conference game in a little bit, or at least as far as I remember.
Well, obviously they didn't last year, but hey, listen, they're doing this here. They got a second bye week later in the year. I think there's plenty of value in that. A little bit better to play the conference early if you can get a second bye week out of it, in my opinion, certainly with some of the injury history that Coach Malzahn's had to deal with.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Well, we'll give them the time to prepare for that and give UCF fans, of course, time to prepare for that as they address concerns from the post-preseason. And now they are ready to go on the road to TCU. But tonight, they take care of Sam Houston 45-14. Kyle, thank you so much for dealing with the technical issues, being down there tonight. Where can the people find you on social media?
Of course, you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as a student of the game. Check out my writings with the blackandgoldbanneret.com. And also, hey, tomorrow I'll be writing some Jaguars. Gabe Davis making his Duval debut. And I don't think John Rice Plumlee suited up yet, but that should be interesting if he comes to return kicks down the road for the Duval Devout. That should be fun too. But check out that work I do on the Duval Live for the instant reaction after that game, and also for Fans First Sports Network. And Bryson Turner, an honor, joy, and privilege to you out there, the UCF, the Knight Nation, an honor, joy, and privilege. Until next time, everyone. Class dismissed.
Man, yeah, I mean, our JRP, coming out there, and if he was out here in the field. But yeah, you can find me at It's Bryson Turner on X. Thank you so much to Jeff. You can find him on Threads, Eric Lopez at Eric Lopez Elo. And also thank you to Brenna Johnson for giving us some amazing photos from this game tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me and Kyle tonight from FBC Mortgage Stadium. I am Bryson Turner. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night. Let's get ready. We start Big 12 play next week. 45-14. UCF beats Sam Houston State. Good night and charge on.